to the Local Pulse on HBC. I'm Dave Dicke, and today we're happy to have with us Aaron Young. Aaron is the managing director of the Great River Shakespeare Festival in Winona. Aaron, thank you for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, for those of people that are tuning in and just are not familiar with you, can you just give us a little synopsis of your career leading to this point in time?
Sure. Yeah, I've been a theater producer for in the nonprofit world for about 27 years, I think. It keeps growing and I keep getting whiter hair. But I started my career at the Sundance Institute, doing the marketing for the film festival and the summer theater program, and then became managing director of the theater program at Sundance. And then ran over to Kansas City rep for a year to experience the cycle of producing year round as opposed to a summer festival. And then for 13 years was the managing director of the Fulton Opera House in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which was a regional theater company, mainly doing large musicals and comedies. Had a almost 800 seat theater and then a 99 seat black box theater. And we produced all sorts of events in that space as well. And then I've been here since 2017 was my first season at Great River, and just loving the experience of being in Winona. It's a magical place to be, even in the winter.
So, what does being a managing director entail?
Sure. Yeah. So in regional theater structures, there's kind of a dual leadership model that's an artistic director and a managing director, who for most theaters are co-equal executives of the organization. So together they're kind of like the CEO, and one has primarily responsibility for the artistic side, creating the art and managing all of the artists that are involved. And then the managing director, who oversees board development, the fundraising, marketing, finance, legal compliance issues, all of the fun stuff that is not artistic. So making the money and spending the money.
Let's talk a little bit about the festival itself. For someone that maybe hasn't been to the Great River Shakespeare Festival yet, how would you describe that experience to someone?
Yeah, so it's more than just going to a play. You can go to a play anywhere in the country and experience it. Our festival is it's not like a Ren Fair or like a ye olde festival where you're going to eat a turkey leg outside the theater and people are going to be walking around in Elizabethan costumes. That's not us. Our focus is really on the text and what Shakespeare wrote and how that applies to us today. But what makes our experience unique is that we perform in rotating repertory. So you can come either in the same day or across 2 days, see multiple shows all involving the same actors. So you can see them doing a comedy and a tragedy, and you can experience a wide range of acting styles from the same performers, and also see how scenery can be used completely differently, even though it's the same scenery, but to create a different world in different productions. And then we have all sorts of activities outside of the performances, like our green show that happens 45 minutes before the performance, that's free for the public to come to catch some snippets of what Shakespeare sounds like, to tune your ear to the performances. And we have ice cream socials and talkbacks with the actors. We do company conversations, which are like a panel discussion every Sunday morning at a local coffee house, just so that the audience can be involved. And what we found is that the performers and the technicians who make the festival, they live here for 3 months and they feel like Winona is their second home, because they spend a significant amount of time And the community, because of all of the interactions that we have with the public, the community feels like they are part of that. The festival staff are part of Winona, and they feel part of the community as well. So there's a real cohesion that gets knit here that you don't get when you just go to a play and go back home.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of the Great River Shakespeare Festival. I'm trying to think the year it was founded, and you can give me that here in a second. But I remember when talk came up in Winona about having this Great River Shakespeare Festival, people were maybe a little bit skeptical as to whether or not Winona could, why Winona, and could Winona support something like this? So I think if you tell us a little bit of the history, I think it kind of answers the question and brings us up to date.
Sure. Yeah. So things got started in early 2000s. There were three theater artists, Paul Barnes, Mark Houck, and Alex Wild, who were teaching up at the University of Minnesota's graduate acting training program. And they said, why doesn't Minnesota have the Shakespeare Festival? And so they got together to have this conversation, and people overheard, not that first conversation, but they actually overheard on a plane of all places, a discussion about it, and said, I know the perfect place for it. It needs to be in Winona. And so a guy named Will Kitchen was very instrumental in bringing those founders down to Winona, and the community, both the civic leaders and the business leaders, rallied around them and said, this is what we want for economic development in our community. Let's get behind this festival. And so, faster than the founders thought, they had this idea, and within a year and a half, the performances were happening because the community just rallied around it, raised the funds, and got the volunteer base to make it happen. And then bam, it was here. And so it was never their intent to come to Winona, but it was Winona's intent to bring the festival here. And so that's where we've been now for 22 years. Our first season was in 2004. And every year we do between 2 and 5 productions. Right now we're at 2, and then we have a guest company that's resident with us here that's doing another production. So we'll have 3 Shakespeare shows for the community to see. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to let you finish your thought there.
No, I was just going to say that it has just been a nice partnership with the community. The community, rightly so, was concerned because it's not like producing community theater. Nobody is volunteers except our volunteers who shuttle people around or make food or hand out programs and do other valuable services. But all of the artists involved in creating the productions are all paid professionals. This is what they do for a career, and so the costs are significantly higher than doing community theater would be. And so this community kind of embraced it, and as a result, saw that other things could happen. And then after that, a film festival came to town, a music festival, several music festivals, and the Minnesota Marine Art Museum got started, Beethoven Festival. And so a lot of things started happening in Winona once the community saw, this works, we can support it.
How has the scope of the festival changed over the years? I know you mentioned there used to be up to 5 shows, and I know that's been pared back a little bit. What are some of the changes that have kind of occurred over the years?
Yeah, so we as we have gotten more and more professional, like we always paid the actors well, but a lot of the people behind the scenes were college interns, and one of the major shifts happened during the pandemic. When we realized that there was a lot of people who had potential to be great theater makers, but they couldn't work for a stipend. And so one of the major changes we made is making sure everyone was paid at least minimum wage and better, kind of comparable across our industry. And that created a major budget change. And so we actually kind of scaled back the number of productions that we had because we realized we needed to do it with fewer people. And so that's been a major change. And then also taking a look at the human toll. A lot of times the college interns were with us for the summer and they started their next school year completely exhausted. And we thought we can't be sending people back, from their experience worse off than they arrived. We need to send them healthier with new ideas and energized to contribute to the industry. And so we also scaled back the scope and realized, we can't have people working on so many productions because it ate up all of their goodwill. And we need that goodwill to exist.
Let's talk a little bit about this year's productions that you have planned. And also, I think what's really unique, at least from what I think about the Great River Shakespeare Festival, for whatever it's worth, is just the interpretation, I think, of the productions. You don't see men in tights.
Right.
It's the costuming is really is more modern, and you walk in, you don't feel like it's what's can I say stodgy? Is that maybe a bad noun or?
Yeah. Shakespeare has a reputation for being very old-fashioned, and being very snooty, and because the language is old, and we don't change the language, but we make sure that the language applies to modern audiences, and that the themes of the shows, because when Shakespeare wrote them, people got it. That's how they talked. And Shakespeare performed for all classes of society in the same performance. And so we want to make sure that what we're doing is relevant to what's happening in people's lives in 2025. And so we do an extensive process of taking the text and making sure we understand what it meant at the time it was written. There are these great books that say this word in 1564 meant this. It doesn't mean the same thing it means today. And then through the way that we say those words, vocal inflection, body language, tone, we make sure that the intent is communicated more than the words. And so people have commented in the beginning, oh, thank you for for changing the text to make it understandable. And it's like, no, we just interpreted the text in a way that you understood it. And so we spend a significant amount of time in rehearsal to make sure that all of the elements, whether it's the ensemble of actors supporting each other, whether it's the costumes, whether it's the lighting, the scenery, the props, that everything is communicating the same meaning so that the audience understands the wit, the double entendre, the logic that's part of Shakespeare, and they go, oh, I get it. This is actually fun. It's a fun mental exercise, even though I know the plot of Hamlet or I know the plot of Romeo and Juliet because I studied it in high school. I've never experienced and had it have an emotional effect on me before. And that's what theater does. But sometimes Shakespeare gets pushed into a very stodgy realm and people don't feel that emotional connection. We make sure that we do that. And sometimes that means we're not performing in tights, that when you set it in a time period that people don't relate to, it creates a separation. And so oftentimes we ground it in something that's happening now. So the Comedy of Errors is grounded in the 1980s, a great soundtrack of 1980s tunes, and big shoulder pads and big hair. And it's something that our audiences will relate to that era.
And before we come to our break, Romeo and Juliet, you've got a little twist on the presentation of that, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it's great because when we study Romeo and Juliet, it's usually when we're teenagers and we look at things from the perspective of these two lovers who take their lives. And our director, H. Adam Harris, said, our audience is mostly adults, and he wanted to see how this tragedy affected those who stayed behind. And so he looked at which character suffers the most loss in the play, and he realized it was the nurse who helped raise Juliet for her parents. And the nurse had lost her own daughter as an infant who was the same age as Juliet. And that's why she was hired to help be the nurse to Juliet. And then she lost her husband, and now she's lost Juliet. And so she is kind of the through line narrator through the whole thing, helping the audience to see the show from her perspective, which is often the nurse is seen like as a comedic relief in Romeo and Juliet, but now we can see ourselves in this story through her eyes, and so I'm really fascinated to see how that plays out in production.
We're going to take a real quick break here on the Local Pulse, and when we come back, we'll have more with Aaron Young in just a moment.
Evan, yeah, we have no internet. I don't know. It just stopped working.
I can't get online again.
Yeah, I'm talking to Evan. No, my daughter, my wife. Okay, can you guys not talk? Sorry. Yes, we have the white boxes. I see one. We have 11 of those. We switched our broadband service provider. Like Devin put in 11, Evan. The best part, I never have to speak to Evan or Devin ever again. Are we looking for 7, Evan, or 11? We have 2 next to each other. That's bad. 2 white boxes. Evan?
Welcome back to the Local Pulse. Today we're visiting with Aaron Young. Aaron is the managing director of the Great River Shakespeare Festival, easy for me to say, in Winona, and talking about this year's production. And I guess as we start off our second half here, let's talk about the educational component of the Great River Shakespeare Festival, because it's very impressive. Talk about the work that you do with young artists, and how students get involved as well.
Yeah, so from the beginning, we involved college students and kind of have a learning track in the technical side, in costume construction and backstage work, stage management, props, scenery construction, lighting design. And we had students working with our professional designers and technicians. And as we got going in the second or third year of the festival, the actors said, you know what, we have great skills that we can share with the community. And so we started doing community classes. And now we have 4 different classes for kids ages 4 years old up through high school graduation. And they study everything from basic theater performance to costumes and lights, but they do what our professional actors do. They study the text, they break it down, they rewrite it into their own words and practice saying it in their own words, and then put it back in the Shakespeare text and use Shakespeare's language to convey the same thought. And then there's a public presentation that they do to show what they've learned and to be able to have a chance to perform themselves and on our main stage. And it's always a great experience every year.
So what goes into preparing for your season?
Yeah, so we start our season, now is when we are finalizing our productions for 2026. And then we select directors after we've selected the shows, and then with those directors select the designers that are going to design all of the elements that you see. And that design work starts in the fall. And then we hold auditions in the winter and get the cast assembled usually in February, and then start recruiting at the universities for all of our backstage and construction work. And then everyone arrives in Winona in the middle of May. And we have a 5 to 6 week rehearsal process and build process where we build all of the costumes and sets. We have a little bit in storage, but most stuff gets created from scratch during that time. And then we perform for 5 to 6 weeks. We go Wednesdays through Sundays, and the shows rotate back and forth. So there's a lot of changeover that happens between scenery and lighting. All of the colors of the lights have to change, so they have to get up on ladders and change every gel that's in the lights in between shows. It becomes quite a lot of work, but because you're doing shows that have different moods. They need different lights, and we can't just have twice as many lights. We have to use the same lights and just change all the colors. So it comes a lot of work.
You talked about you picked the production, then you picked the director, and based on the productions that you want to do, are there directors that maybe, I don't know, specialize is the right word for on particular plays of Shakespeare, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we see different directors work throughout the course of our work. So our artistic director is based in Minneapolis, and he works a lot in New York as well as other markets in the country as a director and as an intimacy director. And so he gets familiar with other people's work. Our co-associate artistic directors are based in New York and Los Angeles. There's two of them, and so they all get together and talk about who they've seen and also who they've not seen that they've heard of, and so we make a concerted effort to see work not just to people that we know, but people that we don't know. When we notice people being talked about in American Theater Magazine, we go check it out. And if there's work that's being done at universities, we check that out as well and learn who those up and coming directors and designers are. In H's case, he had never, so H. Adam Harris, who's directing Romeo and Juliet, had never directed Shakespeare before, but he had directed a number of things and acted extensively up in the Twin Cities area. And now he's at South Coast Rep in California. But we contacted him because Doug was very familiar with his work in Minneapolis and what a heartfelt director he is. And we look for shows where the heart is really there. Intellectual arguments are great, but it doesn't work for Shakespeare. We really want that heart to come through. And so he knew that he would be the perfect director for Romeo and Juliet.
Let's talk about some of the challenges that you face when you're putting on a festival like this. And I know you and I have talked in the past about lots of things. I know what your top concern and challenge always is, but let's talk to that a little bit.
Money. Yeah. So, well, one of the interesting things is that we have 2 full-time year-round people and 4 part-time year-round people. And then in our 3-month season, we have between 70 and 120 full-time staff. And so a big challenge, there's the finances of it as well, but it's getting all those people, onboarding them, bringing them all to Winona, housing them, paying all their transportation, and then making sure that all those people who are now uprooted from their community feel engaged. It's not like they're just here for a few weeks. They're here for a significant amount of time. And that means they have doctor's appointments. They have all these things that are part of their life that they have to find in Winona. So we work with a lot of our volunteers to kind of help connect our artists to the community. But the other side of it is the money. Only about 17 to 20% of our revenue comes from ticket sales. It just, Shakespeare isn't, doing big Broadway musicals. And so it has a very limited appeal. And we would love to have huge audiences, but post-pandemic, we haven't. And so we have to raise, 80 to 85% of our, almost $1 million budget from contributions. And thank you, HBC. HBC is our technology sponsor, which helps us expand and be able to do online ticketing and digital scanning of tickets and trying to save a few trees and not make such paper waste. But our technology has blossomed significantly in the last decade, and so HBC is a great partner there. But it does require a lot of fundraising from businesses, individuals. We've got about 650 households and businesses and foundations that support us every year, and we need them desperately. We don't have a sugar daddy that is giving us $100,000 or $200 or $500,000. It's all made up. All our support is made up of many small donations. So we encourage everyone to give and give often.
So what are your hopes and dreams for the future of the festival?
Yeah, so after being 20 at Winona State University for 22 years, we are moving this fall to the historic Masonic Temple in Winona, and we will be managing that facility for the city of Winona, and there will be other arts organizations with us in that building, and we'll also be booking in other arts activities into that space. So we are becoming not just a producer of theater, but also a presenter of other people's work. And so traveling, groups, whether it's theater or dance or music, we're looking at being able to expand and offer all of that for the community. What that does for us, because we've been performing at Winona State, we have a limited window on when we have access to the stage. And by having our own facility at the Masonic Temple, we will now be able to schedule performances throughout the year. And so we can do programs like one of our challenges is that a lot of students would benefit from coming to see Shakespeare, but we perform in the summer when school's not in session. And so being able to do a production in the fall or the winter when school is in session, we can bring school kids to it and help them see that Shakespeare is a lot of fun, that it's not just something that you have to read to get a grade.
And if someone is thinking about attending the Great River Shakespeare Festival, maybe they're on the fence a little bit and don't know if it's quite for them or not, how would you convince someone to make the trip?
Yeah, I would convince them by saying, if you're concerned about money, we have Pay What You Will Wednesdays. You can name whatever price you want for the tickets and you can order them online. You don't have to ever tell anyone how much you paid. It's all just done online. So that's a great way financially that you don't have to invest a lot. But know that community is the name of the game. That's what we're about. Is being with other people and experiencing something together. Laughing with somebody or the person who sits next to you laughs and you don't laugh, that means that you guys are having two different experiences and that's okay. And that's what we celebrate in the theater. But also that you're going to have a lot of fun. We milk humor out of everything because Shakespeare was an anarchist and he also had a wicked sense of humor, and he hid a lot of his humor to poke fun at the leadership in his day, which was Queen Elizabeth and King John. It lives in my mind. Who was after Elizabeth? King James, James the First. So. But he did a lot of poking fun at leaders. So whatever political spectrum you're on, just know that leadership is always going to be a topic that gets zinged in Shakespeare, and we play up all of that humor and comedy, and it's relevant. And you're going to walk away saying, "Oh, I saw myself. I saw something about myself that I didn't know." Or something that I'm interested in exploring a little bit further in myself. And that's what good theater does, is it causes you to think and question and reevaluate and then have great conversations on the way home and in the weeks to come.
Now, the festival starts, I'm looking at my calendar here, is it the 25th of June?
June 26th. Yeah.
6th. I would have been early.
Yeah, June 26th through July 27th.
And tickets are easy to get, right?
Yes, you go to GRSF.org, or you can give us a call at 507-474-7900.
All right. We encourage everyone to just go to the website and we can learn a little bit more about the productions that are coming up and take a look around and maybe even put a little money in the donation box. And
there we go.
I know Aaron would appreciate it.
Absolutely. All of the artists, because it all goes to them. Nobody's getting rich off of the festival for sure.
Well, Aaron, I know you're right at the cusp of the busiest of the busy times here, and we appreciate you taking time to come talk with us about the Great River Shakespeare Festival.
Oh, thank you, David. We look forward to performing for you all.
And we want to thank Aaron Young, our guest today, Managing Director of the Winona Great River Shakespeare Festival. And we want to thank you for tuning in as well. And we will see you next time here on The Local Plus.